Can NC State men's basketball be a top 5 team in 2025-2026? Well, according to evanmaya.com, the potential is there. We're going to discuss one of his recent features from Evan Miyakawa today on his website, evanmaya.com, his blog. He had up a feature article, 5-team roster outlooks for 2025-2026. So he was looking at 5 different teams, and I've got Jake McSwain with me. And Jake, NC State was one of the 5 teams, and rightfully so. We know they've done a bunch of work in the transfer portal, and Evan does a lot of his stuff is based on analytical numbers and projecting out players based on previous performance and different things like that. And for NC State, it's no doubt Will Wade's made a big impact with this roster when you look at what Evan Maya has projected out, because roster continuity, just 3%. Predicted returning players minutes percentage, 9%. So we're talking Paul McNeil, right? So you had to do a total roster overhaul. And they've done it to the point, Jake, where according to his metrics, he has NC State's roster in the range of 5 to 20 coming into the season. So he thinks it's a top 20 roster that could be as high as 5th in the country.
Yeah. And I think it makes a ton of sense. Like, you talk about the pieces that NC State's brought in, and we've talked about it in other parts of our platform, right? But man, does NC State have a lot of talent assembled on this roster, and guys that have been successful and have track records, and you can project out. So for me, when we're talking about analytics focused services and what they think about NC State, it would make sense that they're high on them. And I guess we'll link to this article in the description so everyone can go click it and check it out. You should. He is a great resource for college basketball analytics. But I can pull it up here, and James, you can start to walk through kind of what what these numbers are saying.
Yeah, so as you can see here, roster range, he's got NC State 520, which he's saying a team with this roster would typically be ranked between 5 and 20 in the preseason. So that's the kind of range of outcomes heading into the season. And he said it doesn't account for coaching ability or recent team success. And one of the things I like about it is the balance offensively and defensively, Jake. Like, this isn't a team he's projecting out to be super elite offensively and, good defensively or vice versa. He has it as a top 19 roster offensively and a top 24 roster defensively. So there's a lot of balance there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about what some of this means from an offense and defense perspective. And I actually think that's really important when you talk about NC State and what they can achieve next year. Because I get skeptical every year when I fill out my brackets around March time and I'm trying to pick who I think is going to win. You always have like the offensive juggernaut that's in the field of 64, like a team that's just been unstoppable for most of the year. And it always seems to fall apart if they don't have a defense that backs them up. Like, if you can't stop people and you can't rely on your defense to win you a game or two in that what would need to be a 6-game run, then chances are you're not going to win it. You're not going to get as far as you wanted to. So that to me, when I'm looking at the numbers and you're looking at guys who have a very defined skill set on the defensive end of the court, it's important. Because on the flip side, man, it's the same. It's the inverse of what I just said. Like, you have the defensive, like UVA is the only example I can think of in recent memory that offense that year wasn't bad either. But you can't just be like a team that grinds the game to a halt and defends and expect to win something big. You got to have a pretty potent offense as well. So I think that balance and continuity is going to be super important.
Yeah, when you look at the individual breakdown for NC State, he gives a breakdown of all 12 scholarship players for NC State, not including Jamie Konstanawimi from Finland. He's not on this list, so you got the 12 scholarship guys. So you got from Darrion Williams all the way down to Colt Langdon. One of the things that stood out to me, Jake, and when I'm thinking about how can NC State potentially get to that number 5 that we've been speculating about and discussing in the headlines and all those different things, Alyn Breed. Guard Alyn Breed is 10th on this rate, according to these metrics, with a 1.49 BPR projected for 2026. So EvanMaya.com has him projected behind Jerry Dean, Paul Mbaya, Matthew Abel, Paul McNeil, Quadir Copeland, and so on. I mean, they have him the 10th lowest player on NC State's roster in terms of BPR. And we think this is a guy who has the potential. He could be State's second best player. He could be their third best player. He has the potential to be that high. And it wouldn't really be saying a lot because we know the staff views him as the type of player with that potential as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about this on a podcast we did recently, but it makes sense as to why a stats guy like Evan Maya is not big on Alyn Breed. Like to make sure that everyone understands who Alyn Breed is. One, go back and watch our film room on Alyn Breed. I think that'll give you an idea of the type of talent that he has and the role that Will Wade had anticipated using him in last year. So I'd recommend you go watch that. But know this, just the story behind Alyn Breed is he played 2 games last year. He didn't play the year before that. So it's like 2 years. He's played 2 games in 2 years. And the year before that, he had a limited role at Providence. So you're looking at not a lot of a book on Alyn Breed for these stats guys to go off of. But on the flip side, you have them having us as the, a top 5 to top 20 type team without what could be your second best player. So like that makes you like kind of paint the picture in your mind of, well, what could this season look like if Alyn Breed hits? Or, and I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, because I think for me and you, we've done multiple projected starting lineups. We have Alyn Breed projected to be a starter.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have him, according to the metrics, factored in as your 10th best player, I mean, that's a ton of upside, right? Like if he's replaced, if he's just starting level player, you're going to really hit. Because if you look at the top 3 guys on this list, you got Darrion Williams, Tre Holloman, and Ven-Allen Lubin. They don't play his position. So if you're plugging another player in with their type of production at a different position, yeah, that's one of the ways you can hit your ceiling for sure. And the other thing I wanted to mention with evanmaya.com and the breakdown on NC State is right below it, he gave another listing, Jake, and this was another NC State team roster outlook. And all of a sudden, you see these numbers look different. You got NC State 33 through 39 in terms of overall team roster outlook, 32 through 38 offensively, and defensively 48 through 44. So you say, what happened? The only thing that changed is he took Darrion Williams out of the metric system. So we knew, Will Wade talked about this for a couple of weeks, Jake. He said NC State had to land that stud. They had to land that go-to scorer, that big-time piece that clearly he felt like they were lacking on the roster. Well, you see it in Maya's metric system here, because now adding in Darrion Williams and everything he provides, and I scrolled through, if you look at this entire list of teams, you got Purdue, Kansas, UConn, Tennessee, NC State, and Gonzaga. So you've got several high-quality teams. I believe Darrion Williams is second overall in total BPR behind Braden Smith from Purdue. And so that tells you how highly he thinks of him. And this from a top 20 team to 39 top 40 team, that's a big impact Darrion Williams is projected to make.
Yeah, and it makes sense because I think you got to have a stud. If you want to be a really good team, you got to have one. If you don't, then your ceiling is just kind of capped. Like maybe you go on a run and maybe you can make some things happen, but at the end of the day, you're going to need to be able to rely on one of those guys to really carry you through some tough situations. Now, I got a question for you, James. Looking at this list that they have for NC State and how Evan Maya grades out NC State's roster, give me one guy outside of Alyn Breed that you think is getting undervalued.
Wow. Well, there's 2 for me, and you got to remember he's doing this on OBPR and DBPR both factoring in together, right? In terms of your total impact. Paul Mbaya, right? For me, I think his defensive BPR at 1.33, which would rank 3rd on the team behind Terrance Arceneaux and Darrion Williams, which is, again, you're getting good respect to come in as an incoming international transfer, and it'd be 1.33. But I want you to scroll. I don't know if you can scroll all the way up on what you have, Jake, but if you go up to Kansas, and you look at Flory Badunga, who is a similar player to Paul Mbaya from a skill set perspective, his defensive BPR is 3.22.
Mm-hmm.
So if Mbaya comes in and he's able to be that shot blocker, rebounder, rim protector that he could project to be, 1.33 is probably going to be low. That's going to be low. So for me, if I had to pick one, I would probably go Mbaya.
Okay. See, because I'm looking at that and I agree with you. And I'm looking around at other NC State's other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I guess one thing I'm going to point out kind of in passing is how much he values Darrion Williams' defense, because we're going to do a film room on that. And people have asked what they think of him as a defender. Well, we've touted Terrance Arceneaux as like a really good defender, like in a lot of different ways, and a very capable team defender and a huge plus on that end of the court. Paul Maya says the stats say that Darrion Williams has a 45% more of an impact on that end of the court.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah,
but to throw my perspective on that question, I think it might be Jerry Ding. Just given
he was the other
on the offensive side of things, like I think he could outperform that OBPR pretty significantly, and would make him would I just think that he could be a efficient offense, not just a good offensive player, but a quite efficient offensive player for NC State. Now turn your attention back there, James. Do you think there's anybody that might possibly be overvalued on that?
Well, I would say, I guess looking according to the metrics here, they've got Paul McNeil as your fourth highest OBPR. And so that's factoring in, because they've got the lowest overall defensive BPR. Actually, he's a 0.01 above Colt Langdon. So he'd be, according to this system, he'd be, 11th in defensive BPR. So he's in the middle of the pack because he's a 2.22 OBPR. And that would be, like I said, that would be fourth on this team behind Williams, Holloman, and Lubin. And I don't know, like he's a player, like I'm big on Paul in terms of his upside, all those different things. I know you are too, Jake, but he's a player who we're still wondering what exact role he'll have, right? Because we've been projecting Alyn Breed to have a larger role than him. Not saying it'll definitely happen, but if he's in the mix to be your 8th or 9th or 10th guy off the bench, I don't think he's going to have your 4th highest OBPR.
That's a really good call. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that.
So factoring that in, because like I said, the DBPR is so low that if that drops at all, he's down at about. And it could be a simple. What if we just flipped Alyn Breed and Paul McNeil's names? How much differently would we feel about it?
Mm-hmm. That's fair,
right?
Yeah. To me, the only one I was thinking maybe Quadir Copeland on what they gave him on the offensive end, and given what his role is going to be. Potentially, maybe I think that's somewhere, or Lubin maybe on the offensive end, like maybe they're putting stock in his Vanderbilt year as well, because I think that's kind of to get that type of number, you probably did have to have some of that. So that's the only route that I could really think there. But yeah, I think that it's a really good question. So James, I guess we've gotten to the point now where we can start to ask. Let's put your money on the line here and say, do you think NC State ends the season as a top 20 team, top 10 team, top 5 team, or outside of the rankings completely? What do you think?
Well, it's so hard, right? Because you're always looking injuries, at least for me, injuries first. Like assuming everything stays as you'd expect, maybe you have a ding here or there. But if you're assuming, fairly, I think 20 is a safe floor. I really do with this team. I think it's all, for me, it comes down to 2 players when I'm looking at what the ceiling of this team is going to be. And those guys are Alyn Breed, who we've talked about, and Paul Mbaya, who we've talked about. How they fare, I think, is going to determine where State ends up from a ceiling standpoint. Because I think I expect Breed to have a role, or the opportunity to have a role, and if he hits, is up here. And then
Mm-hmm.
Mbaya is just a game changer. Like if Paul Mbaya comes out and he's able to be an impactful force, I mean, he changes things for you on the defensively end, because I know, like you said this before, he's going to be fine rim running and finishing dunks and getting offensive rebounds, putbacks. And that's probably all they're going to ask him to do offensively.
Mm-hmm.
But if he can stay out of foul trouble, rebound everything, be a rim protector, it's going to change state. So I would say top 20, but I get it. I get the top 5 ceiling when you really peel it back and look at this roster. So I think it's a cool article to look at here in the middle of the summer. I think he's onto something with NC State, because that's a big deal. And the other thing I want to point out, Jake, before we get going, the range of outcomes taking Williams out and adding him in. I mean, it tells
Mm-hmm.
you how he views him as like this elevator of a player, right? Because he's got him factored in, and he's saying they could be as high as 5 to 20. But when you take him out, that number drops from 33 to 39. Like you've only got a 6-spot difference in the roster range without him. It's 15 with him on the roster. So I think he's saying, like, this is the type of guy who, when you add him to a team, he makes others better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a floor establisher for NC State. As long as he stays healthy, NC State's going to be fine. And I think you're right on the money. For me, this is a top 25 team. I have a hard time seeing a world where everyone is healthy and State's not a top 25 team. But I think if Mbaya hits, specifically Mbaya, NC State will have the best big man rotation in the ACC, or the best five spot rotation in the ACC. Like that is a really, really solid 1-2 punch. Either way you want to start them or come in for each other, like that would be huge.
Yeah, Jake, and think about it like this. We've already taped our Ven-Allen Lubin take. We haven't done our film room on him yet, where we've looked at his skill set. But this is a guy who I think was top 5 in the ACC in offensive rating, and was top 10 in block percentage, defensive rebounding percentage, and offensive rebounding percentage last year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those guys are gone. Like, he might be the only guy returning in the ACC checking those boxes. And so even before you factor in Paul Mbaya, you're high up there in the league at the 5 position. So you add Mbaya in, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, I think this is a team that could be the best, have the best 1-2 punch there at the 5 position.
Absolutely.
So there you have it. Let's wrap this thing up. We wanted to discuss Evan Miya's feature here. We're going to have it linked below, evanmiya.com. I want to give him credit for the article. Make sure you check it out. And, yeah, if you haven't, subscribe at Inside Pack Sports. We're going to continue to post content here daily. Talk to you again soon.